A millionaire slammed on the brakes, his eyes locked on the sidewalk. A little girl in ragged clothes clutched her baby brother, shaking an empty bottle, her tangled hair flying in the cold wind. Her hands were dirty, trembling, yet her eyes burned with defiance. He stepped closer. She pulled away. He offered help. She whispered, "Don't give us hope and leave." His heart tightened, memories stirred, but he never imagined this fleeting moment would change his life forever. If you want to know what happens next, stay with me until the end of the video. And if you still believe deep in your heart that God is always watching over you, silently arranging everything then right now, leave a comment saying Amen below this video. Because who knows, at the very moment you write those words, a blessing may quietly enter your life. The air in the mountains of Asheville carried the sharp bite of autumn when Lily Carter's world crumbled into ashes. Only weeks before, her life had been ordinary in the way children treasure most. Their small wooden house at the edge of town smelled of pine shavings from her father's workbench. He was a carpenter, steady and strong, his rough hands always holding the scent of fresh-cut wood. Her mother filled the rooms with quiet songs as she mended clothes near the window. And in the middle of it all, Lily played on the rug, teasing her baby brother Noah, whose round cheeks flushed pink each time she pinched them lightly. It was not a rich life, but it was warm. Laughter often echoed through the tiny house, mingling with the creak of her father's saw and the hum of her mother's voice. At 8 years old, Lily believed those moments would last forever. But forever proved to be much shorter than she imagined. On a cold night, when the wind howled through the trees, fire broke out with a fury that seemed born of the darkness itself. Flames leapt high, swallowing the walls that once sheltered them. Lily remembered the crash of the roof as it gave way, the smoke thick in her lungs. Her mother's panicked voice shouting their names, and then the dreadful silence when the fire took everything. By the time dawn arrived, the house was nothing more than a smouldering heap. Her parents were gone, their laughter extinguished in a matter of hours. The funeral was brief and quiet, attended by only a handful of neighbours who laid flowers without lingering. When the last words faded and the final prayer was spoken, Lily stood clutching Noah, his small face pressed against her shoulder, and understood with painful clarity they were alone. The chill of October seeped into her bones as the mourners drifted away. The yard, once full of family and warmth, now stretched empty and silent. With Noah whimpering in her arms, Lily tried to imagine where she could go. The name of her uncle, Gary Collins, and his wife Denise flickered in her memory. Though she had rarely seen them, blood ties meant something, didn't they? Surely, she told herself, relatives would not turn away two children with no place to go. And so she began the walk, every step heavy beneath the weight of her brother. The road was not far yet for a child of 8, burdened with an infant. It felt endless. The wind pressed against her thin frame, and Noah cried until his small voice cracked. Lily whispered fiercely, almost as if trying to convince herself, "I'm your sister. I'll be strong. I won't cry." When the house finally appeared behind its iron fence, she gathered every scrap of courage she had left. Her knuckles rapped on the door, timid but determined. She expected kindness, or at least pity. What she found instead was a wall colder than the autumn wind. Denise opened the door first, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes calculating rather than compassionate. At the sight of the children, her frown deepened. Lily's plea came out in a trembling rush. "Please, Aunt Denise, let us stay. I'll work hard. I'll do chores. I promise we won't be trouble." But compassion never touched Denise's face. "Your parents owed us money," she said flatly. $3,000. Who's going to pay that now? The words struck Lily like a blow. Her knees buckled, but she clutched Noah tighter. "They're gone," she whispered. "Does that mean you'll abandon us too?" Before she could beg further, heavy footsteps echoed and Gary Collins appeared behind his wife. Broad-shouldered and harsh, he looked down at the children with eyes like steel. His answer was short, his voice cutting through the night. "Go away. I won't feed you. Don't stand here bothering me." Lily dropped to her knees on the cold step, Noah wailing in her arms. Her tears spilled unchecked as she pressed her forehead to the hard brick floor. "Please, Uncle, just give us a corner of the house. I'll care for Noah myself. I won't be a burden." But the door slammed in her face with a final click of the lock. The echo hung in the air long after their footsteps faded inside. And there in the shadows of the porch, Lily clung to her baby brother and wondered with a heart too heavy for a child. Where do we go now? The night after the door slammed shut behind her, aunt and uncle stretched endlessly before Lily. The iron gate loomed tall, separating her from any sense of belonging. Noah's cries pierced the darkness, his tiny fists beating weakly against her shoulder, as if asking why the world had turned so cruel. She stumbled down the road, her thin shoes scraping against gravel, the October wind whipping across her face until her skin felt raw. Her tears blurred the streetlights, and her arms ached from carrying her brother, yet she pressed forward. Each step felt like sinking into an abyss, but she whispered over and over as if it were a prayer. "I'm here, Noah. I won't leave you." That night, they found shelter under an oak tree near the edge of town. Lily huddled on the damp ground, clutching her brother against her chest to shield him from the cold. Noah's breathing was shallow, his cheeks flushed from exhaustion. Lily dared not close her eyes, afraid that if she drifted into sleep, the world would snatch him away. Morning brought little relief. Her stomach growled with hunger, her lips cracked and dry. She remembered her mother's kitchen, the soft bread, the scent of warm broth, but those memories only sharpened the emptiness inside. Noah whimpered his small mouth, searching for a bottle that was no longer there. With trembling hands, Lily carried him to the central market, a bustling place filled with vendors, shouting over crates of apples and baskets of green. The smell of roasted peanuts and fried bread made her dizzy. She spotted a discarded plastic bottle near a trash bin and bent quickly to pick it up. Her fingers blackened with dirt. "Get out of here!" A woman's sharp voice cut through the crowd. The stall owner frowned at the ragged child crouched beside her booth. "This is no place for beggars." Lily froze, clutching Noah tightly, her eyes wide with fear. "Please," she whispered, her voice so faint it nearly dissolved in the noise. "I just need the bottle. My brother. He needs milk." The woman glanced briefly at the flushed baby, then waved her away with a scowl. Lily lowered her head, biting her lip until it bled. She picked up the bottle anyway, wiping it with her sleeve. Noah's weak cry reminded her she had no choice. That afternoon she heard rumours of free porridge at the church. Gathering every ounce of courage, she made her way there. A line stretched long across the courtyard filled with adults jostling for a place. Small and frail Lily was pushed to the back again and again. Her knees shook, but she bit down hard and held Noah close. A rough shove nearly knocked her to the ground. Noah slipped from her arms, his body lurching dangerously forward. Before panic could consume her, an old woman's steady hands caught him just in time. The woman had silver hair and weary eyes, yet when she handed Noah back, her gaze softened with pity. "Poor child," she murmured. "So little carrying your brother like this." Lily lowered her head, her voice breaking. "I can't let him go. If I fall, he'll get hurt." The woman sighed, said nothing more but guided Lily gently toward the front of the line. Thanks to her, Lily received a small bowl of hot porridge. Sitting on the church steps, she blew gently on each spoonful, feeding Noah slowly until his cries subsided. She saved only a few spoonfuls for herself, swallowing them quickly while hunger burned in her stomach. By the time she looked up to thank the woman, the kind stranger had already vanished into the crowd. That night she rested under the overhang of a supermarket. The yellow glow of the street lamps flickered as cars sped past. Lily pulled her torn shirt over Noah's chest to shield him from the wind. His cries echoed in the night, thin and sharp. Desperate, she rocked him back and forth, humming broken melodies her mother once sang. Her voice wavered, full of sobs, but she kept whispering, "Hush, Noah. I'm here. Don't cry." Days turned into weeks. Lily scavenged bottles and cans, trading them for a few coins to buy powdered milk. When she could not, she returned to the church, always saving her portion for Noah. Her small hands grew blistered, her nails cracked, yet she never let him go hungry if she could help it. Through heat and cold, she fought to keep him alive. In the summer sun, she shaded him with cardboard scraps. When rains came, she huddled with him under building eaves, soaked to the bone. Sometimes he burned with a fever, and she spent entire nights awake, clutching him close, whispering prayers she barely understood. The carefree little girl who once played on the rug with her toys was gone. In her place stood a child who had learned to carry burdens far too heavy for her small frame. Her eyes no longer sparkled with innocence, but with a weary resilience that refused to die. 6 months passed. 6 months since her uncle and aunt turned them away. 6 months of wandering streets, begging strangers, and nursing her brother through sickness with only scraps and determination. One grey afternoon, as clouds pressed low over the mountains and a bitter wind whipped through the streets, Lily passed through a wealthy neighbourhood. She stopped in front of a large house, its windows glowing warm behind tall iron gates. For a moment, she saw her reflection in the glass, a thin girl in rags clutching a baby with hollow cheeks. Her lips trembled as she whispered almost to herself, "I wish we had a place like that too." The words floated into the air, fragile yet fierce, a tiny spark against the shadows that surrounded her. She carried Noah away, but the wish lingered in her chest like a faint flame refusing to be snuffed out. She had no way of knowing that soon that small wish would collide with the stranger's heart in a way that would change their lives forever. The evening was unusually quiet on the edge of Asheville. Clouds hung low, pressing the sky into a grey ceiling, and the street lights cast a tired glow onto cracked sidewalks. Lily sat beside a trash bin, her back aching, Noah restless in her arms. She had managed to mix a little powdered milk into a nearly empty bottle, shaking it with cold water she had begged from a shopkeeper. The mixture was thin, little more than cloudy water, but Noah sucked greedily, desperate for nourishment. Lily leaned against the trash bin, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Just hold on, Noah. One day we'll have something better." Yet, even as she spoke, her chest ached with doubt. The distant hum of an engine pulled her from her thoughts. Headlights appeared at the far end of the street, growing brighter until a sleek red car glided to a stop at the curb. Its polished body gleamed under the street lamps, utterly foreign to the world Lily now knew. Inside, Matthew Grant sat in silence. Known across the state as the owner of a luxury automobile corporation, he was a man admired by some, envied by others, and feared by many who worked under him. At 40, Matthew was the very image of success, a sharp suit, silver cufflinks, and a face carved by years of discipline. Yet beneath the polished surface lay scars he never spoke of, the memories of a childhood marked by abandonment and the quiet fury of being forgotten. His driver shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we should keep moving. This area isn't safe." But Matthew's eyes had already settled on the fragile figure at the roadside, a girl far too small for the baby in her arms sitting on a piece of cardboard beside a trash bin. The sight rooted him to the spot. "Wait," he said, his voice low but firm. The driver obeyed, though his expression betrayed confusion. Matthew stepped out, his leather shoes striking the damp pavement. The air smelled faintly of rain and city dust. Lily stiffened immediately. She pulled Noah closer, pressing his face into her chest, her eyes darting with suspicion. Everyone always looked and walked away. No one stopped unless it was to chase her off. Matthew's voice carried across the short distance, steady but not harsh. "Are you here all alone?" Her heart pounded as she backed up against the trash bin. "Don't come closer," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "Everyone just looks and walks away." The words hit him like a blade. For a moment he saw himself at 12 years old sitting on the steps of a broken house, neighbours passing with cold glances, his father too drunk to notice his existence. Her voice was his own echo from decades past. "I'm not like them," he answered quietly. "I want to help." But Lily shook her head, clutching Noah tighter, her eyes flashing with the instinct of a cornered animal. Noah's bottle was nearly empty. The nipple squeaked as he sucked desperately at nothing. His cries grew louder, piercing the night. Matthew's throat tightened. Without another word, he turned and signalled to his driver. From the trunk, the man brought a bag with groceries Matthew had purchased earlier. Inside was a bottle of warm milk, fresh from the store. Matthew held it out, keeping his distance. "Take this. Give it to him. It's real milk." Lily's eyes flickered between the bottle and the man. Fear battled with desperation. Finally, Noah's cries broke her resistance. With trembling hands, she reached out, never looking away from Matthew. She swapped the old bottle for the new one and pressed it to her brother's lips. Noah latched on instantly, drinking with urgent relief. His cries faded into soft gulps, his tiny hands waving as though he had just been saved. Watching him, Lily's defences cracked. Her shoulders shook, tears spilling as she whispered, "Why? Why do you care? No one ever asked about us." Matthew stood frozen. He had no answer that wouldn't unravel the walls he had spent years building. Her question pulled at the wounds he had buried, deep wounds he thought time had sealed. For a moment the silence between them was filled only by the sound of Noah drinking. Lily pressed her cheek against her brother's hair, sobbing softly. "Don't give us hope, and then leave. My heart can't take it anymore." Matthew drew a breath, steadying himself. He turned back toward the car, then paused. His driver opened the door, waiting. But Matthew's gaze lingered on the fragile siblings, the memory of his own abandoned childhood pressing hard against his ribs. Finally, he spoke, his voice gentler than he had meant it to be. "Come with me. You can't live like this." Lily's eyes widened. Her heartbeat thundered. She wanted to believe, but fear tangled with every instinct. Yet when Noah finished the bottle and sighed in contentment, her arms loosened slightly. She stood still, wary, and followed Matthew to the car. The ride through Asheville was quiet. Lily pressed herself against the window, clutching Noah as though ready to flee at the first sign of betrayal. Matthew leaned back, watching the blur of streetlights. He did not speak, unwilling to push her too fast. The car turned onto a cobblestone road lined with tall trees. At its end, an iron gate swung open, revealing the vast courtyard of Matthew's estate. Warm yellow light spilled from tall windows, reflecting off white stone walls. Lily froze. The house looked like another world, a place she'd only whispered about in her dreams. She tightened her grip on Noah and whispered, "If you send us away, we'll leave right away." Matthew knelt slightly to meet her eyes. His voice was steady. "This will be a temporary place for you both. No one will hurt you here." Inside Mrs. Whitaker, the housekeeper greeted them with a stern but gentle smile. "Welcome, dear. Don't be afraid. Come in." The foyer was vast chandeliers glittering above polished wood floors. To Lily, it felt overwhelming, almost terrifying. She clutched Noah as though the gleaming walls might reject them. Mrs. Whitaker led them to a neat room upstairs, the bed covered with fresh linens. But when night fell, Lily did not dare rest there. She curled in the hallway outside Noah in her lap, whispering, "If we get sent away tomorrow, at least I didn't dirty their sheets." Hours later, Matthew found them sleeping against the wall. He crouched, his gaze heavy with something he had not allowed himself to feel in years. "Why didn't you sleep in the room?" he asked softly. Startled awake, Lily stammered, "I was afraid. Afraid if we used it, we'd be sent away tomorrow." Her words struck him deeper than he expected. He straightened his tone, firm but warm. "Go inside. That room belongs to you." And for the first time in months, Lily stepped into a bed not made of cardboard or cold pavement. She laid Noah down, her heart still guarded, but carrying the faintest spark of hope. Life inside the Grant estates began with hesitation, like a bird too frightened to test its wings. For Lily, every polished surface and golden chandelier felt like a trap that could vanish at any moment. She moved quietly, keeping to the edges of rooms, always clutching Noah as though someone might try to take him away. Matthew noticed. He saw the way she ate quickly at the breakfast table, eyes darting as if someone might scold her for taking too much. He saw how she scrubbed dishes with trembling hands, terrified she would break one. And when at last a crystal glass slipped from her grasp and shattered on the kitchen floor, she dropped to her knees, stammering, "Please don't send us away. I'll clean it. I'm sorry." Before she could reach for the shards, Matthew crouched beside her and caught her wrist. His voice was firm but not angry. "Stop. Things can be replaced. You cannot. No one here will send you away for that." Lily froze wide-eyed, as though she had never heard such words before. Something softened in her, though she said nothing. That night she left a scrap of paper on the kitchen counter, the letters shaky and uneven. "I will be good. Please don't send me away." Matthew found it in the morning. He stood for a long time staring at the crooked handwriting, the note trembling slightly in his hand. For years he had lived in silence, his heart locked behind walls of iron. But that note broke through like sunlight in a dark room. He folded it carefully and placed it in the pocket of his vest, where it stayed close to his chest. Days turned into weeks. Slowly laughter began to return to the house. One afternoon, Noah toppled over during his first attempt to crawl, only to be scooped up by Matthew before he hit the floor. The baby giggled, his chubby hands grabbing fistfuls of Matthew's dark hair. Lily gasped at first, but when she saw Matthew wince and mutter, "Hey kid," she burst into laughter. For a moment, the mansion's cold halls echoed with the sound of joy. Mrs. Whitaker watched quietly from the doorway, a small smile tugging at her lips. She had served Matthew for years, seen him rise in business, seen him retreat from the world. But now, for the first time, she saw him living. Yet peace never lasts long when greed lingers nearby. On a windy evening, urgent knocks rattled the estate's iron gate. Darius Cole, the night guard, checked the cameras and reported through the intercom, "2 people outside, sir." a man and a woman demanding to speak with you. Matthew stepped into the courtyard, his figure sharp under the porch light. There stood Gary and Denise Collins. Gary's jaw was tight, his hands pressed firmly to his hips. Denise dabbed at her eyes with a crumpled tissue, her mascara streaked down her cheeks. "My brother just died," Denise cried, her voice trembling with practiced sorrow. "We are the legal guardians. You have no right to keep them." Matthew's gaze did not waver. "If you were their guardians, why did you throw them out that night?" Her face faltered, but she quickly leaned into her husband's side. Gary stepped forward, his voice rough and demanding. "You've got money. We don't. If you want to keep them, then pay us $50,000. Behind the glass door, Lily clutched Noah to her chest, her body trembling. She whispered so softly, no one else could hear Uncle. "Why do you want to sell us?" inside. Mrs. Whitaker laid a steady hand on the girl's shoulder, guiding her back from the door. Darius shifted closer to Matthew, his posture sharp, ready in case anger turned violent. Matthew raised his chin, his voice dropping to an icy calm. "You call that guardianship? Putting a price on children at someone else's gate, not a single cent. Get off my property!" Gary's fists, clenched veins bulging at his temples. "You'll regret this. We'll sue." "Do what you must," Matthew answered, taking one deliberate step forward. "But right now, you leave." Denise collapsed to the sidewalk, wailing loudly, her sobs deliberate and theatrical. "I lost my brother, and now they steal my niece from me. My God, who will understand a mother's pain?" Her cries echoed down the street. Neighbours peeked out from behind curtains, some stepping onto porches. Phones lifted to record. Mrs. Beatrice Nolan. The neighbourhood gossip appeared at the corner with arms folded and eyes sharp, whispering to anyone who would listen. Murmurs spread like wildfire, suspicion twisting in the air. Inside, Lily crouched behind a chair, trembling at the noise outside. Her voice cracked as she asked, will he change his mind if everyone believes them? Matthew returned from the gate, his footsteps steady. He paused by Lily, resting a firm hand on her shoulder. His words were quiet, meant only for her. "I won't change my mind." Outside, Denise's sobs grew louder. Gary's voice harsher, and the crowd swelled with restless energy. Matthew gave a short nod to Darius. "Call the police. Report a disturbance." The wail of sirens soon cut through the neighbourhood night. Blue and red lights washed over the iron gate. Officers stepped out, dispersing the growing crowd, warning the couple to leave or face charges. Gary pulled his wife to her feet, his glare burning with fury. "This isn't over." He spat before retreating into the dark. The street fell silent again, but the damage lingered. Videos spread online before midnight. By morning, headlines screamed across local news sites. Millionaire exploits orphans to polish his image. Blurred photos of Matthew leading Lily and Noah into a hospital were twisted into accusations of a publicity stunt. Comment sections buzzed with suspicion and whispers swirled through Asheville like a storm cloud. Inside the estate, Lily saw the newspaper spread across the table. Her face drained of colour. Clutching Noah, she turned to Matthew with tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's not true. They want to tear us apart again. Will people hate us now?" Matthew folded the paper, calmly setting it aside. He knelt to meet her eyes. Rumours fade. Truth remains. She buried her face against his chest, sobbing while his arm wrapped firmly around her. For years, he had told himself he needed no one, But now, holding a frightened child who trusted him against the weight of the world, he knew he had something far greater than solitude. And those storms were gathering outside. Matthew Grant would not let them sweep Lily and Noah away. The courthouse in downtown Asheville stood with a quiet gravity, its stone steps worn smooth by decades of trials and verdicts. On the morning of the hearing, the air was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and faint traffic from Pack Square. Inside, the polished wood of Courtroom 3 gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights, offering no comfort to the small girl who sat in the front row. Lily clutched Noah tightly, his soft breath steady against her shoulder. Matthew sat beside her, his hand steadying her trembling fingers. His face, though calm, carried the steel of a man prepared for battle. Across the aisle, Gary and Denise Collins sat rigid. Denise with a dark shawl draped around her shoulders, tissues clutched in her hand. Gary leaned back, chin lifted, a smirk flickering as though victory was already his. At their side sat Victor Hale, their attorney, sharp-eyed and deliberate, his suit pressed to perfection. By contrast, Matthew's attorney, Sarah Klein, radiated quiet confidence, her gaze steady as she arranged files on the desk. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Whitmore entered his tall frame, carrying the authority of decades on the bench. His gavel struck once sharp and final. "Be seated. We will begin." Victor Hale was the first to rise, his voice smooth yet edged with accusation. "Your Honor, my clients are the rightful guardians of Lily and Noah Carter. These children were taken under false pretenses by Mr. Matthew Grant, a wealthy businessman using them as tools for public sympathy. This is abduction masked as charity." Denise dabbed her eyes theatrically, whispering just loud enough for the court to hear, "I only want my niece back." Sarah Klein rose calmly. "Your Honor, Exhibit A." She handed a folder to the clerk, who passed it to the bench. This contains sworn statements from 3 neighbors confirming that the children were expelled from the Collins residence the night of their parents' funeral. Exhibit B is a promissory note for $3,000 signed by Mr. Gary Collins, establishing clear financial motive. The judge flipped through the papers, his face unreadable. "Proceed. Call the witness." Sarah continued. The rear door opened and Frank Delgado, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, entered and raised his hand to swear an oath. His voice carried the plain honesty of someone with nothing to gain. "I saw them throw the children out that night. The baby cried without stopping and Lily knelt on the steps begging. The door slammed shut. Victor Hale stepped forward, his tone cutting. "Mr. Delgado, can you be absolutely certain those were the children in question?" Frank met his gaze firmly. "I lived next door for 3 years. I know that girl's voice. I know the sound of that baby's cry. And I know the sound of that door slamming." A murmur rippled through the room. Sarah pressed gently. "Did you hear any mention of money?" "Yes," Frank said without hesitation. "A few days later I heard Gary shouting in the street, saying if anyone wanted to keep the children, they'd have to bring him money." Denise shot to her feet, her voice shrill. "You liar!" "Order!" Judge Whitmore barked, his gavel striking. The courtroom fell silent. Sarah glanced toward the Lily, her voice lowering. "Lily, are you ready? You don't have to if you're not." Lily's small hands tightened around Noah before she handed him to Mrs. Whitaker, who sat quietly in the back row. With hesitant steps, she approached the stand. The clerk asked her name, and she answered in a soft but clear voice. Sarah's questions were gentle, never pressing too hard. Lily, can you tell us what happened when you went to your uncle and aunt's house? The courtroom stilled as her words came simple and unembellished. I knocked 3 times. My aunt said they had no room. My uncle said, "Go away, I won't feed you." I begged, but they shut the door. Sarah paused, then asked the final question. Lily, what do you want to tell the court, in your own words? For a moment, Lily stared down at her scuffed shoes. Then she lifted her head, her eyes red but steady. Her voice trembled, yet it carried through every corner of the room. They didn't want us. They only wanted money. Silence fell heavy and unbroken. A woman in the back row dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Matthew's chest tightened, pride and sorrow twisting together as he watched this small girl speak truth with the courage of someone far older than her years. Victor Hale tried to pivot his tone sharp. "Little girl, did Mr. Grant tell you to say this?" Lily shook her head fiercely. "No, he just made milk for Noah. And he told me to eat slowly." A short, startled laugh broke from someone in the room before dying quickly. Even the judge's stern expression softened for a moment. When all evidence had been heard, Judge Whitmore leaned back, fingers interlaced. "The court has reviewed the testimony, the signed note, and the witness statements. There is no evidence of abduction. The petition to return the children is denied. Furthermore, Mr. Gary and Mrs. Denise Collins will be fined for perjury and will bear court costs." His gavel struck once more. "Temporary custody remains with Mr. Grant until adoption proceedings are reviewed." For a moment, the courtroom was still. Then Denise let out a piercing cry, collapsing against Gary's shoulder. "This isn't fair. I won't let this go." But no one listened. The crowd was already murmuring the tide of suspicion shifting away from Matthew and toward the Collins couple. At the defense table, Matthew remained calm, but when Lily returned to her seat, he reached out and took her hand. Her grip was small, fragile, but no longer the grasp of despair. It was the hold of someone who for the first time believed she was safe. As they stepped out into the Asheville sunlight, Lily lifted her face toward him and whispered, almost in disbelief, "We won, didn't we?" Matthew looked down at her, his voice low and steady. "Yes, but more than that, the truth won." And for Lily, those words meant more than any verdict. Winter swept over Asheville with a quiet grace, snow drifting across the hills and softening the sharp edges of the city. At the Grant estate, the tall windows glowed with warm light spilling out into the frosted garden where evergreens stood dusted in white. Inside the house no longer felt cavernous or cold. It was alive with laughter, with footsteps, with the sounds of a family that had finally found one another. The adoption papers arrived just days before Christmas. Judge Whitmore's signature was crisp at the bottom, declaring in solemn words that Lily and Noah Carter were now, in the eyes of the law, Lily and Noah Grant. When Matthew handed the envelope to Lily, her small hands trembled as she read the words aloud, her voice breaking with joy. It says, "We get to stay." She dropped the papers and threw her arms around him, tears spilling freely. "Dad," she whispered for the first time, the word fragile yet powerful. Matthew froze, overcome, until Noah babbled from his arms. "Dada." The sound shattered the last of the walls he had carried for decades. He pulled both children close, his own tears falling unashamed. "Thank you," he choked. "Thank you for calling me that." Christmas morning dawned with the scent of cinnamon and pine. A fire crackled in the hearth stockings hung neatly above the mantel. Lily tore into a small package to find a set of coloured pencils, her eyes shining brighter than any jewel. Noah clapped his tiny hands at the sight of a stuffed bear, nearly his size. Matthew sat back, watching their joy with a peace he had never known. Mrs. Whitaker bustled in with cocoa, her smile softer than ever. Darius brought in an evergreen wreath, hanging it on the door with quiet pride. The estate no longer felt like a monument to wealth. It felt like home. On New Year's Eve, Matthew stood on a wooden stage at the town hall, Lily at his side holding Noah. Behind him hung a banner with bold letters, "The Hope Foundation, every child deserves a home." His voice carried steady and clear. "I once believed my life had no place for family. I lived in fear of repeating the mistakes of my father. But these two children changed everything. They showed me that love is not weakness, it is strength. And no child should have to sleep on cardboard or live in fear of being abandoned. This foundation will give orphans and abandoned children a chance to find safety, education, and love." The hall erupted in applause. Some wiped their eyes. Even those who had once doubted him now stood in support. In that moment, Matthew realized he was no longer fighting alone. Later that night, as fireworks painted the sky above Asheville, Lily ran into his arms, her laughter ringing clear. "Happy New Year, Dad," Noah babbled along, clinging to his shoulder. Matthew laughed, holding them both tight, his heart so full it ached. "This," he whispered, "is home. Our home." And as the clock struck midnight, the once cold mansion on the hill was no longer the house of a lonely millionaire. It was the home of a family bound not by blood, but by love, that had risen from ashes and would shine through every storm to come. Today's story comes to an end, but its echo still lingers in the heart. What do you think? Give us a score from 1 to 10 and feel free to share a few words in the comments. Every voice here is valued and heard. Before you go, let me ask you gently, are you doing okay today? If your heart feels heavy, let this place be a quiet corner where you can share and find comfort. See you again in the next bedtime story, where love and hope remind us that no matter how dark the night may seem, kindness will always prevail.